Welcome to One Broken Mom, a podcast dedicated to raising awareness of mental health, parenting, and self-improvement. I am the host, Ameé Coney. One Broken Mom is not a family show. It is meant for adults and contains sometimes adult language. The topics I cover can be serious and unsettling to people. However, I do have a sense of humor laced with a little bit of a punk rock attitude. So if you're interested in real talks about real stuff by real people so that we can all get better together, well, then you're in the right place, and so welcome. Okay, welcome everyone who's listening to the show and watching on YouTube. I'm super grateful to have you back with me here on One Broken Mom. As some of you may know, on the show, I do my best with balancing educational and awareness with also sharing real life experiences of, and I'm going to air quote this, broken people. And I'm always quick to clarify that when I say the word broken, I have never, since I started this program, have meant it in a victim kind of a way. I've used that word with intention because, as the famous Hemingway line from Farewell to Arms goes, the world breaks everyone, and afterward, many are strong at the broken places. And so I like to share stories of the people who were broken and rebuilt themselves in powerful and inspiring ways. And so this is one of those episodes today that we're going to talk about one of those stories. Jen Proctor is the founder and CEO of Cultivated Entertainment, a highly successful talent booking agency out of LA and New York that sports a roster of clients that includes A-list celebrities as well as some of the top studio and production companies in the entertainment industry. And when Jen was a teenager, she lost her mother to suicide. Now, where the loss of a parent can be the kind of trauma that devastates you for life, for Jen, it was that tragedy that instilled in her an inner compass for which she would make balance, wellness, and well-being a top priority in her life. And Jen is here with me today to talk about her experience and to share with us how she turned her tragedy into triumph. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. These are always really tender topics to discuss. Suicide in our culture and in our society, it tends to be kind of skirted around. I think more and more people are becoming more comfortable with talking about it. But when I've talked with other people and that have been affected by suicide, and my guests have been with, like yourself, parental suicides, one of the common things that they talk about is that, no one really knows how to talk to them. And they have stories to share and they want to talk about it in some degree, but I think we're also really uncomfortable of how we broach the topic. And so even though I've had guests on the show to talk about this, I always admittedly struggle with how to start the conversation. And so
Sure.
I think what I'd like to have you do is, would you mind opening up and telling us about your mom?
Yeah. Her name was Sue. Everybody called her Sue. It was Susan, but she was Sue. And I get to, carry her name as my middle name, throughout my life, which is very special to me. But she was a bright, shining star. I think people that didn't know what was going on behind the scenes saw her as, beautiful and kind and the life of the party. And, she was tall and thin and, stunning and just, had all the things, had 3 beautiful kids, a loving husband, from the outside, had this really, really wonderful life. But on the inside, behind the closed doors, there were times when it was very, very, very dark. And, she was really 2 different people at times. And, she was never formally diagnosed, but I think that she was bipolar. There was very high highs and very low lows. And with those lows come, a barrage of just abuse, physically, verbally, emotionally, all of those things. But when it was good, it was really, really good. And she was an amazing mom and just so loved by so many people.
That's wonderful. Now, do you, have any insights onto a little bit of her history? Because one of the things that we share quite a bit here on the program is that there is an intergenerational link, with our mental health, our mental wellness, our brain health, and well-being. And how much of it were you able to know about your mom and what her childhood perhaps was like and her relationships growing up were like for her?
Yeah, well, I mean, her, admittedly, when she died, her parents, my grandparents, didn't understand. So, I think this was not something that really affected her entire childhood. I will say that recently, within the last year or so, I sat down with her mom, and I think only now, so many 20 years later, is she coming around to the idea that, okay, maybe there were some signs when she was younger, but she did really well in school. She was on the song leading team in high school, on the swim team in high school. Very social, had tons of boyfriends. Had a really good life as far as I understood, and never had any mental or substance abuse issues or anything like that. And she. I mean, again, I was 13 when it happened, but I would say probably my first memories of things being really bad were probably around kindergarten. Um, to the point where I used to be hospitalized for migraines, and they couldn't figure out why I had these migraines, and I think it was just a physical reaction to what was happening at home. But she, it was alcohol at times. I think there was a lot of seeing different doctors for a variety of different things to get different prescriptions. I think there was lots of cocktails of crutches. I think she just, living each day was really, really hard. And so she was always searching for, whatever it is, if it was smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol or taking pills or working out, there was always something that was sort of her way of escaping, I think, her own mind and her own body.
So are you saying that this was something that there wasn't an actual diagnosis ever given to her? Like she just seemed like she was like every other woman out there in the world, just kind of walking around and, you
She
know,
was she was diagnosed as like an alcoholic. She went
okay.
to a few different rehab facilities. So, as far as we knew, and, up until she died. And also, 20 years ago, mental health was not understood. I mean, it's made a lot of headway in the last 20 years. So she was just, yeah, she was an alcoholic. She was an addict. She went to rehab and, multiple times. And I think from the, there was some depression and things, but yeah, it was never like, this is what mom has and this is what the problem is with her. I think it was just it was an array of issues
Hmm.
and a chemical imbalance, disease. It is a disease, and it's something that, you are not in control of.
Right, right. Had she ever attempted suicide before?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah. Several times. Yeah.
okay. And so what's it like? What was your relationship like with her? Up in, for the time that you had her in your life.
Yeah, I mean, when it was, we'll call it like the angel mom and the devil mom. When it was the angel mom, I mean, we were best friends. She was my biggest fan, and I have memories of we drive around in her car. I'm a singer. I've always been a singer my whole life, and I just remember, rocking out and singing together as we drove around. And I still, anytime there's like a few songs that I, just really take me back to that time, or we would go shopping or we'd be in the kitchen. She loved to cook. So, she really was a great cook, and, we'd be hanging out in the kitchen all the time. And, so I do have really, really great memories that are very profound and wonderful. But when the devil mom, when this dark cloud came over her, I was also the first person that she blamed everything on. And I'm the oldest of three kids. So I was the one that took the brunt, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And my father's an entrepreneur, and owns his own business, and he was supporting a family of five, and he worked a lot. And I don't blame him for that at all, but I think he maybe just wasn't aware of how bad it really was. And I was constantly caught in between the two of them. Do I tell dad? But if I tell dad, mom's going to be really upset with me, and then what's she going to do? And I'd rather just take it a day at a time.
Yeah, that's my chest is tightening for you because that's a really stressful. I mean, I can imagine,
Yeah.
the ups and downs and the balance with all of that. Now, you said your mom was 13 when she died by suicide.
I was 13.
Yeah,
She was
I'm
30.
sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Of course not. No, you were 13. My apologies.
Yeah. She was really young when she had
Yeah,
kids.
totally.
Yeah, I was 13. She was 39. And my brother was 10 and my sister was 8.
Okay. Is that an experience that you want to talk about, the when you found out that she had passed away?
I mean, it wasn't really that I found out. I was with her.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was my dad's birthday. They got in a fight. You know, they both left to go to the party. They got in a fight, and she told him that she had to come home. She put all of us kids to bed in my room. My room was upstairs, and I had um, a porcelain piggy bank on my desk that popped. And I walked over to where it was and saw a hole in the wall and knew what had happened. And walked around the corner, and she was there, and I had to call 911, and they made me stay on the phone with them and stay with her. So yeah, I mean, I was there.
Wow. I can't even imagine. I mean, I'm to be honest with you, I'm just completely shocked right now. I think about my own daughter being the same age that you were, and it's heartbreaking to think of an experience like that to have to go through at that age. And so I'm so sorry. I mean, I mean that completely. Um, what happens after that? I mean, who swept in? Did anybody sweep in to take care of you, to step up into this situation? And I mean, what were the next steps after that?
Yeah, I mean, well, my dad, obviously, he's Superman. He took us to my grand. My dad's side of the family is very close knit. My entire family all lives within like an hour of each other. So we went and we stayed at my grandma's, and we were back in school. This was Saturday night, and we were back in school on Monday. Which some people think is crazy, but looking back, I think that was really all my dad knew to do, is like, we have to keep a routine. We got to get them back. It's like, we just got to keep going. And that's very much, what he has instilled in us. And a big part of who I am now is, yes, life's going to throw you lemons. Like, pick yourself up, make some freaking lemonade and keep going.
Right. Did did the family get any support, any mental health support? And I ask this because like I said, I've talked with the stories before, and another family that had gone through a similar circumstance as you know, some of them did, some of them didn't. And so when something like this happened, again, given this was 20 years ago, and our understanding of mental wellness and in particular post-traumatic stress and trauma is very different than then. Did anybody think, or did you actually start going to see a counselor to talk through this and to deal with the grief of this?
Yeah, we went a couple of times to a family counselor, but I remember after we left, maybe we went a handful of times. I remember we were all in my dad's car leaving, and we all just sort of had a conversation, and none of us really, I remember they were having us draw pictures and things, and we just weren't getting anything out of it. And I think that, and I just personally have not done a lot of therapy. I mean, you know, am very outspoken about my emotions and have wonderful relationships, and, am a complete open book, and I share everything with everyone. And I think that's really my therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really need to go talk to a stranger. I'd rather talk to somebody that I know and love. That's going to, yeah, so, we did a tiny bit, but nothing profound, nothing that really helped us move through what had happened in a particular way.
Right. Now, with the fact that you had a lot of, we'll call them parental responsibilities, being the oldest, and I'm actually the oldest in my family too. So I know that, that I don't want to call it a burden, but it kind of is when you're like, you get to be the one that watches after all the siblings because everybody else has got other things going on. Did you feel any guilt or shame around your mom choosing, to die by suicide? Like, was there ever any part where you felt like you didn't do enough, or that somehow you were to blame for any of this or any of this? And I'm not trying to place feelings or
Sure.
emotions in you. I'm just
Sure.
asking if that came about.
No, I never, I think when it happened, like, of course, it's sort of weird. And it wasn't so much that I was ashamed or guilty. I think it was just, as you had mentioned at the very top, people don't really know how to act around you. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. And so I think that was, sort of hard sometimes because I'm such a social person. I always have been. And I felt this sort of, from adults to children, it's, people just, didn't quite know how to act or what to say. And admittedly, in this in a it was almost a relief. It was like I didn't have to always worry about mom. I mean, every single day I never knew which mom I was going to get. I never knew, what was going to happen when I came home from school, what mess I would have to pick up, what story I would have to make up, to cover things up. It was very, very, very hard. So it was a little bit of a relief. And I remember my dad when we were, I don't know how much longer after, but he was like, gosh, Jen, would you just be a kid? Because, I really never, even from a young age when she was alive, I never really was a kid because I always had that responsibility. So yes, when she died, that responsibility continued, but it was in a different way, and I think my dad worked very, very hard to make sure that all three of us still had incredible childhoods and were able to be kids and live, normal lives.
Right, right. I've talked about this before that there is a fatigue that sets in when you are in a family dynamic that has a lot of, dealing with some mental health issues. Where you having to step up all the time to take care of the situation and even to take care of yourself just really ends up wearing you down. And I can imagine again with the added responsibility of also having to help out with your siblings and stuff like that. That happened a handful of times. I'm happy your dad took the stance of allowing you guys to go back to your childhood and to make that happen for you. You think that your childhood afterwards then was much different than obviously than the childhood you had before?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was 13, so it was very different. I think that was almost the time when I needed my mom the most. Like, what do I do when I get my period? And what about what about this boy that I just kissed? Like, you can't say those things to dad. I mean, he's a cool dad, but he's like, don't touch my daughter with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
So there were certain moments that were really, really hard. But yeah, I mean, he definitely did so many things to make sure we had fun. And I not that I was not a rebellious kid at all, but I snuck out a few nights and I probably stayed out a little past curfew at times. But I think in the grand scheme of things, he was like, all right, she's let her come home 10 minutes past her curfew. It's not a big deal.
Right, right. Did you have any women that came in to or try to come in and provide some of that, some of those missing pieces of,
Oh,
not having a
sure.
mom? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. My dad's mom, my grandma Harriet, I mean, she's still alive, and she's like one of the most special people in my life. She certainly stepped up in a big way, and her and I, since I was a little girl, have always had a really, really deep connection. But she's my grandma, so she's significantly older than a parent is, and I mean, she's definitely with it, not in that. But it's a different relationship with your grandma than it is with your mom. But she's wonderful, and I was able to have conversations with her that I couldn't with my dad. And she could stand up for me when dad and I weren't seeing eye to eye on things. And yeah, I'm very, very, very lucky to have her.
Oh, that's cool. Now, many of us experience tragedies and traumas, and it does change us. And unfortunately, not always for the better, because that toxic stress of that experience. And it sounds like even prior to the death of your mom, there was a lot of that back and forth and up and down, and having to balance and manage all that. And those things can actually end up saddling people either with PTSD or these lingering emotional wounds that crop up in all different aspects of our life. What do you think changed you from this experience?
Oh man, so many things. I mean, I think I am the person that I am today because of it. I think the way that I approach life and my business. I mean, it's like the tagline on my website is that I come from a place of compassion. And, I think people look at me and see one thing or, hear one thing and, want to judge so quickly or, want to assume things. But like, you have no idea what I've been through. And I think that's the case with everyone. Even if there's a guy behind you honking on the horn, instead of sticking your finger out and flipping him off, okay, maybe he's on the way to the hospital because he has a sick relative. Maybe, he's any number of things, and so I think if we all just sort of approach relationships and conversations and circumstances with compassion, because everybody has a story, everybody has something that they've been through, and who are we to say how significant that experience is or isn't? Someone's parents getting divorced could have been just as traumatic as me losing my mom. It's every person is different. We have a different toolbox. We have different emotions and different environments and. I just think that it's the world to be, the world is most beautiful when we really, really come from a place of compassion.
Right. And it sounds like, that's a mindset that because of the fact that you said that your mom seemed like she was two people, she appeared on one way to everybody outside and had a demeanor and a posturing that was very different than maybe in sheltering a lot of the pain that she really had going on inside of her. So, I mean, it sounds like you're adopting that into your day to day and interacting with everybody. Do you feel like you're able to connect with people in a different way now, having actually been in the experience of seeing those really deeply, the movement of the ups and downs that are related to perhaps a bipolar caregiver and personality in your life?
Yeah, I think that it's easy for me to connect with people and vice versa. And in a very quick and deep way. And it's just because I really wear my heart on my sleeve because of what I've been through. And I think people, they trust me. They, if they tell me a secret or they tell me something that they're going through, like that's between us. And so yeah, I mean, I think it's why I have so many incredible relationships, both, in my personal life and in business. It's because I really, really care about people and they care about me.
So, so how have you then translated this? Because our story today with you is really it's a tale of resiliency, where coming out of the experience, it's not about having to go back and repair that moment and then move forward in life. I mean, it sounds like you were able to really take a strong step forward from that moment. Or or were there any setbacks that you had to kind of overcome first, or were you able to just say, listen, here's a defining moment for me and I'm going to go forward and it's going to be positive momentum, every step, every day?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think there were a ton of setbacks. I think, when something like that happens, I think I never wanted anyone to feel sorry for me. I never wanted anyone to give me excuses for anything because of what had happened. And that's, a lot in thanks to my dad. He never wanted us to say, oh, I don't want to go to school because this happened. I mean, he really, really instill that in us. And I think so for me on the more personal level, I never wanted people to, I always wanted to excel and be the best at everything because I never wanted my life circumstances to be an excuse for, inadequacy or failure.
Yeah. So how is that reflected today with you in your business world? Because, you're a young woman, you've got your own company that you're running in there. Obviously you come from your dad's an entrepreneur. I have met plenty of entrepreneurs. I am one myself. And I think that, the spirit and the drive to do that does actually come from a lot of times having good support or also having to overcome a lot of challenges, which makes the idea of starting a business like nothing. It's not even a daunting task.
Yeah.
So what do you do? How is it that you integrate this compassion into your business world?
Well, I think it's, I mean, the most, the first level is, within my team with everyone that I have. I mean, I call us a family all the time. I believe in us always being honest and, I also have, I wouldn't call it a loose policy, but I just don't believe in, okay, you need to be tethered to a desk from 9 to 5 every day. I just don't think that people are productive. And, I'm really communicative and really try to connect with everyone and understand where they're coming from and what they're enjoying out of the job, what they're not enjoying out of the job, and how they can excel and really kind of help guide them towards that part of the business. And on the client level, I think it's the same thing. I think that I mean, ton of every business this day and age is email, but I really do enjoy connecting and bonding and spending time with clients or associates or peers or people that work in my industry or others. And I think just the ability to have a conversation with pretty much anyone. I feel like regardless of whatever my upbringing was, my experience really does make me able to relate to anyone, regardless of size, shape, color, you name it. And I think that it's the one thing that really has made me excel.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, is it different? I mean, is the approach kind of different from what everybody else is doing around you in the industry?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's different. I mean, it's just my own, it's my own thing. Yes, probably. I mean, I don't think everybody cares as much as I do. And that's a little bit of a gift and a curse sometimes. You spend your time and your energy worrying about people or circumstances or things that, most people would just dismiss immediately. So, but I consider it a big strength. And I do think it sets me apart from people. It's like that little icing on the cake, that little added touch of, making something personal.
Right, right. Now, with your experiences, and you've been open, it's I've talked with some people, and not many people knew that they had a parent that died by suicide. And for you, though, that I don't think that's the case. Like, this is something that you've been very open with sharing with folks about that. Do people ever come to you and seeking any kind of advice on how to build their own resiliency when they're dealing with something like this kind of a tragedy?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think substance abuse and mental disease is so prominent in everybody's lives, unfortunately, and so I think that because, and there's other cases in my family, and so I think because of that, anyone who's dealing with something like that just feels very comfortable talking with me about it because they know I get it. And it could be, crazy drugs or depression or, whatever it might be, how to talk to a relative or a loved one that may have a problem, someone who has a problem themselves. So yeah, that's definitely been a trend, for lack of a better word. I mean, and I'm sort of there in that way. I love giving advice and listening to people and helping people through hard times.
Mm-hmm. So I've asked some of the other survivors of parental suicide, it's the gift of hindsight. And it's not that we can go back and change your past or, what your experiences were and stuff like that. But, when people are listening to these stories, they may not be dealing with the suicide of a parent, but they are, perhaps dealing with the grief of a loss of a parent or a loved one and stuff. Was there anything when you look back on that experience at 13 years old, you and your siblings and your dad going through this, that you wish could have happened then, or probably would have been really beneficial if it had happened at that point in time, in terms of nurturing or caring for everybody that's involved in this situation? I mean, is there something that you're just like, gosh, I kind of wish that, back then somebody would have said this or done this for me?
No, I think I mean, as tragic as it was, I have an amazing family, and I think I never felt a lack of love. I felt so much love. We went to a small private school, and I think that was really great too, because I mean, it was very, very, very small. We come from a teeny tiny town, and they were like family too, and so supportive, and my classmates and my teachers, and I mean, there was so much love. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have anything that I wish went a different way. I mean, the circumstances are tragic, and of course, I wish she was still here. Don't get me wrong. But I don't I think everything happens for a reason. And I try to live that every day, knowing that, okay, what can I take from this horrific experience and how can I make my life and the lives of others better?
Hmm. Well, I think that what you're definitely talking about something that can make a huge difference for people, which is having support, and having a lot of it there. Because sometimes, like we said earlier, when you are dealing with something like this, it's easier to talk to somebody who loses a parent in a car accident, right? Or, but the additional stigma of suicide on top of that certainly kind of puts this veil, around you. But it sounds like you had the benefit of growing up and having
Mhm.
people around you that were not afraid of that, or certainly didn't see the veil around you and your family, and took you in, and which probably makes a huge difference, in feeling that security, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a veil. I mean, when somebody, even people will know me for months or years and not know that about me. And then all of a sudden they learn it and they're like, whoa, I had no, like, I mean, it really, you take a step back. And that's okay. I think that's a normal human reaction, and it's because it is such a tragedy. But at this point in my life, I'm used to that reaction. So it doesn't make me feel any certain kind of way. I just, yes, I know. Don't feel weird. It's
Right.
okay. We could talk about it. We don't have to talk about it. Don't treat me any differently. I'm still the same person.
Tell me a little bit about the podcast that you do. It's called Cultivated Conversations. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So what's that all about?
Yeah. So, well, when I was a little girl, I think I mentioned earlier, I was a singer my whole life, and a performer. So always had that confidence. Was never afraid of a stage or a microphone, so to speak. Um, and I went to school for broadcast journalism, and I had a couple kind of record deal situations when I was in college that fell through, and I thought I was going to be a news anchor. And upon graduating, it was one of those things where, my mentors were like, okay, well, you need to move to, podunk town, whatever state with population 35, and start there. And I was a city girl. I wanted to live in LA and New York, and so that was just not an option for me. So I started my career in the industry, and I think a big part of it is that I wanted to be a good person in the industry. I didn't feel like I had good people around me in my singing career, and sort of guiding me. And, fast forward to now, I mean, obviously I have this wealth of knowledge and experience and an understanding of my industry. And, beyond that, my personal circumstances and experience as just a human, and, with my mom and just everything else, it gives me this very unique understanding of humans and interest in humans and conversation. Plus, I'm not afraid of the microphone. So it was sort of this really organic thing where it's taking my business and my passion and, conversations that I was having on the daily with, huge executives in my industry, all the way to, the people who make design the costumes for things, and everybody has a story. And that's really what Cultivated Conversations is about. It's about, let's sit down, let's hear your story, be vulnerable, tell us about your life. We see you here and now, but how did you get there, and what was the journey like? And it's very, very vulnerable, in a really beautiful way. And it's been really fun. We're in season 2, or about halfway through season 2. And we've had all female guests thus far. I'm not opposed to having males, but it's just sort of, I think maybe the females are more down to be a little more vulnerable. I'm waiting for that first male guest. If you're listening, hit me up.
I have them out there. I have guys, definitely. I resonate with that because somebody left a review just the other day about the show, saying that my show was like mostly female centered. And it's like, yeah, but you'd be surprised. I get like 50-50 on the emails, from men and women that are listening to the program. And there are guys that are wanting to be vulnerable, definitely out there. Some of them totally open with doing it like out in public, and some of them just prefer to just shoot me a message and just say, hey, thank you. And, and kind of keep it
Yeah.
on the down low. Well, and I laughed
Yeah.
about Podunk City because I'm from Kansas. So I know exactly the cities where they're looking for anchors to get their,
Yeah.
their feet
Oh
wet
yeah.
and get
Oh
started.
yeah. Yeah.
So
Every person in the town, and I mean, and sometimes I dream of that life now. It's like, God, I want to just move to that small town and like sing in the bar, a couple nights a week and call it a day.
Right.
But yeah, at that time I was just so excited to be making my own money and starting my career that, I moved to New York and it's like, didn't have a job and just did it.
Yeah. So when did you start Cultivated Entertainment?
So technically the company's about 3 years old, but there was about a year or so of, kind of building things. And it's been so fun. I mean, every day is a new adventure. My team is absolutely incredible. We're all obsessed with each other in the best way possible. And yeah, we're here in LA, we're in New York, we're constantly expanding and growing, and it's amazing.
Well, I have a soft spot for entrepreneurship because outside of One Broken Mom, where this is about, mental health and parenting and self-improvement, I actually do business coaching. And then I have a women's entrepreneurship development speaking series that I do. So, I meet and I love being a cheerleader for businesses. And so
Right?
I really can
Yeah.
nerd out when it comes down to like, okay, what's your story with your business and how's it going and how exciting it is for that. Because like I said, I've done some interviews with other programs talking about entrepreneurship, and I do attribute when you have tragedy, when you have traumas, when you have all the adverse experiences growing up, they do shape you, and they shape us all so differently. And I know that everything that I am today, that I absolutely am in love with, I would not be there if it hadn't been the drive to survive and to overcome. And like I said, being in the kind of the same birth order position as you, having a lot of responsibilities put on you and having to balance a lot of things makes you really pretty well cut out for being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And the challenges that you have in there, and then the resiliency, which it's a hard thing to have to earn your resiliency, honestly, Jen, the way that you did, but you have it, right? It's there. It's built into you now. You might as well be using it to do something great for yourself and
Right.
for people that you work with, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So being able to, build into a business and then take it and run with it. Now, for the people that are listening, I have a lot of therapists. We all know what therapists do, and a lot of folks that are on the show. But let's talk about what your agency is like, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that have no idea what it's like to work in LA and New York and work in the entertainment industry.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the way that I describe my business is as it's a wheel, and at the center of that wheel is talent. So, 9 times out of 10, that's celebrity. It's, athlete, musician, actress, somebody that you see their face or hear their name, you know who they are. And then all the little spokes on the wheel are the variety of services that we provide. So there's a lot of talent booking. So like when you see the Tonight Show or, Good Morning America, that, there's somebody that brings those celebrities to the show. So we do a lot of that. We work with a lot of brands if they have a new campaign or an event, and help them, align and understand what type of talent is going to help them sell their product or get people on board. And, we do a variety of other things. We consult, sometimes people just bring us on as a think tank, like, okay, how can I think about this from a talent perspective? We do talent producing. We also do casting. And just a variety of things. And it's really have created this place that doesn't exist. There are businesses that do one of each of the spokes and do them very well and very successfully. But, the entertainment industry and many industries, quite frankly, are changing a lot, and gone are the days of the three companies running everything. And, it's really, really empowering. There's so many entrepreneurs and people stepping up and more boutique style things and more personal business, less room for assholes. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on
It's
here.
an adult show. Don't worry about it. You're
Okay.
fine.
Less room for assholes. I'll say it again. But yeah, it's really great. And we've, been growing and expanding, very consistently and yet rapidly. We've brought on 3 new team members in the last 2 months alone. And every day is truly a new adventure. It's not one of those jobs where you come in and you know what you're doing every day. I mean, sure, you can have your to-do list and your things you need to do, but it's just, it's a wild and amazing ride.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Now, I know when I ran my companies and I had employees after growing up as the older sister and having younger brothers, I found myself that my employees felt very much like my family, like they became like a surrogate family. Do you think in some way or find that by running your own company, you're still the big sister taking care of things?
Oh, totally. It's so funny. Somehow in the last like couple of weeks or couple of months, I started referring to myself as Mama Bear with my employees, and I'm like, what am I doing?
You did
But
it.
yeah, I mean, yeah. But that really is, I mean, I feel this love and responsibility for them. And in turn, I know that they feel that love in return. And, we all work really, really hard. And there's times when things are absolutely crazy. And, just like life, you're losing your mind and your calendar is insane. And then there's times when it's more chill and we get to have more fun and get to know each other. But I really, yeah, I mean, we're a team, we're a family. And yeah, I mean, I'm the leader of the pack and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're built for it. I mean, you were
Yeah.
groomed and you were made for that. So in your in this experience, kind of coming out here now, you're 20 years down the road, and you're looking at probably the strongest characteristic that positively that you're carrying from this. What do you think that actually is?
I think being genuine. I think genuinity is unfortunately sort of rare. I think especially in this world where of the Instagrams and all this stuff, it's you're only showing the beautiful, wonderful parts of your life.
Right.
And I think there's something really, really, really beautiful in just being genuine and being who you are. And nobody's life, nobody's days, nobody's weeks are perfect. I mean, absolutely not. If they say they are, then send us whatever you're taking, because we all need to be having some of that.
Right. Yeah. Well, what I want to is, like I said, I don't want to hyper focus on your mom's suicide. And I really want to make sure that we are touching on for you, where your positive direction is coming out of this. So, one of the things was you understanding how to create more balance for you and wellness and well-being. Can you talk a little bit about what that is, like how this experience helped
Yeah.
you to say, listen, I need, these things are really important, and
Yeah.
understanding very early how important that was.
Yeah, I think when you go through something like that, and I think of anyone who's dealt with, someone who's an addict or has a mental disorder, there's a thing called codependency. You learn about it, but you don't put yourself first. You're always worried about this other person. And I think that was something that, my life was always, as much as I did live for myself, I've always lived for other people. And, quite frankly, I think it's an endearing quality, but, something that I've really learned in my, more recent years is this thing, and balance is such a trite word because, who's really balanced, but,
Right.
I mean, but, I think the most important thing is yourself, and you hear, you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on someone else. But I think we're all so busy, we're all doing, and I really try, of course I work out and I eat healthy and I do all of those things, but I really try and check in with myself in a way that, if I'm getting burnout or if I look in the mirror and just think, gosh, you look tired, my job is one of those jobs that I am on all the time. I am talking to people all the time. I'm social all the time. I'm, going out to this or that or this or that. And sometimes I just, I'll go do a staycation, or I'll throw on my jammies and, turn off the phone for a day. And that's just sort of my version of it. And so I think just a piece of advice for people is that, balance for you is your own thing. And I think it's just really, really important to check in with yourself, and whatever that means. If that means, going and running 10 miles and that's what, keeps you balanced, fine. but really try to figure out what that is and what sort of helps you reset. I think we weren't built to constantly be on in the way that we are now, with technology. And I mean, people can get a hold of you 18 different ways. And it's this thing, if you don't respond right away, like, how dare she took 3 hours to send to get back to me on text.
Right.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I talk to my grandma all the time, and she still sends handwritten notes, but I think, like, God, how did you date back then, Grandma? Because I mean, you would sit around waiting on the home phone. And if you were out at the market, you would miss the call and then you'd have to call back or he'd send a note, I mean, so life is just very, very different, even in the last 10 years, even the last 5 years. And I think it's important to turn off the noise sometimes and just take a moment or 5 minutes or a day or a weekend and really focus in on you.
Mm-hmm. No, totally agree. Yeah. And I bet dating back then was a lot less stressful than it is right now. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, dating today is like swipe, swipe,
yeah.
swipe, swipe. Yeah.
I have my own episodes that I do just solely on that, where I get to like complain about dating, but or try to do it in a healthy way. But that's not I'm a little old fashioned there. So
Yeah. Yeah.
no swiping for me, that's for sure.
You should try it. It's a
Yeah.
fun game. You probably won't go out on any dates, but you'll
Right.
have a few conversations that end in nothing.
My thumb will be really well exercised.
Yeah, your thumb
I'm
will be
sure.
Exactly. Yes, your right thumb will be a little bit leaner than your left thumb.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank God for that. No. Well, Jen, I have to tell you, it was a pleasure talking to you. And it is inspiring. I think, there's a lot of, there's obviously pain. I mean, there's no way of saying that, hey, we just march on and all things are good and, everything's great after this. There's a whole lot that you've been able to process in your life at a very young age. And that's tragic in itself. But it is nice when you can actually see that somebody is capable, of being able to form some resilience to it in good, healthy ways, not just blocking your, world off from everybody and shutting out the doors, but actually opening your life up, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
allowing that life there, and doing it and sharing that story. Because again, there is this veil that comes around the topic of suicide. People don't like to talk about it. And they certainly don't know how to ask questions about it. And when you can come out and say, listen, I've been through it, I've dealt with it, and this is how I come out on the other side. I think that it would be, it's empowering for other people to know that there's a possibility in there. Do you have any, last words of advice? We talked about balance and self-care and stuff like that, but what else would you tell somebody that's gone through something like this?
Yeah, I do. On that note, I think just don't ever be afraid to share. Don't ever be ashamed of anything that you've been through, whatever it might be. I think that people go through things all the time, and there's probably a lot more people that can relate to whatever it is you're going through. And there's nothing like having somebody to relate to help you get through something.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. So thank you for putting that out there. Well, again, it's been awesome meeting you and talking to you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.